It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, we talked, Eric, a few months back, I think it was, about what might happen in the car industry, where Congress passed the law a couple of years ago that really didn't get noticed in the Infrastructure Act, which basically said 2026 cars have to have the technology to monitor the driver for being distracted. And it's like, what does that mean? Nobody knows where that's going to go with the 2026 vehicles. Republicans are trying to overturn it, but don't have the votes.
Right.
But we talk about what kind of technology would it be. You know, we don't know yet what they plan on using. The government's got to figure that out, and then we'll mandate to cars what they must do. I think they have to do it by 2025. They have to have the rule written as to what they want to do. I think it's what they were talking about, that rulemaking for it.
Mm-hmm. Now,
they know what they want in general to monitor the driver, but taking that another step further, technology we have today, this is in the Wall Street Journal, insurance companies using drones in order to check your property out.
They can fly over your house. Do you have a trampoline? Ooh, that's a risk.
Yep. They talk about this one woman that was dropped by her home insurer last month. The reason? Aerial photos of her roof, which her insurer refused to let her see. I thought they had the wrong house, she said. Our roof is in fine shape. Her insurer said its images showed that her roof had lived its life expectancy. She paid for an independent inspection and found that the roof had another 10 years of life. Her insurer declined to reconsider its decision. Across the U.S., insurance companies are using aerial images of homes as a tool to ditch properties seen as a higher risk. Nearly every building in the country is being photographed, often without the owner's knowledge. Companies are deploying drones, manned airplanes, and high-altitude balloons to take images of properties. No place is shielded. The industry-funded Geospatial Insurance Consortium has an airplane imagery program it says covers 99% of the U.S. population. Wow. The array of photos is being sorted by computer models to spy out underwriting no-nos such as damaged roof shingles, yard debris, overhanging tree branches, and undeclared swimming pools or trampolines.
Yep. And if you have a swimming pool, do you have a diving board? You say you don't, but do you?
The red flagged images are providing insurers with ammunition for non-renewal notices nationwide. We've seen a dramatic increase across the country in reports from consumers who've been dropped by their insurers on the basis of an aerial image, said Amy Bach, executive director of Consumer Group United Policyholders. The increasingly sophisticated use of flyby photos comes as home insurers nationwide scramble to de-risk their property portfolios, dropping less than perfect homes in an effort to recover from big underwriting losses. Wow. Insurers say the customers agree to home inspections when they buy a policy and that photographing properties from the sky is less intrusive than the home visits used in the past. They say deploying fleets of surveillance planes let them respond more quickly to disasters and charge rates that better reflect a property's risk. If your roof is 20 years old and one hailstorm is going to take it off, you should pay more than somebody with a brand new roof, Allstate CEO Tom Wilson said in an interview. He also said that the insurance giant is far along in using digital images to improve underwriting, and there's even more to come. The industry's enthusiastic embrace of digital surveillance is sounding alarm bells among consumer advocates. One concern, whether customers can easily challenge images that might be out of date or inaccurate. The one woman we talked about earlier said it's absolutely wrong that she was dropped without being able to see the evidence that precipitated the decision. And they said it was because her roof had basically the lifespan was done.
Right.
So a spokesperson for her insurer said it changed its policy to allow consumers to see images on request. Plane and satellite images are reviewed by employees and enable accurate and efficient inspections, they said. So there you go. State Farm last month said it will cull some of its policies in California. It plans to drop coverage on around 30,000 residential and 42,000 commercial properties. It didn't specify how it would decide which policies to drop. A spokesperson said the financial health of its Californian homeowners operation continues to be affected by factors such as inflation and catastrophic exposure. Wow. That's interesting, especially in a place like Texas. We have another storm coming in tonight, and what are they talking about again?
Hail.
Hail. When it comes to your roof.
Mm-hmm.
Several states restrict the reasons insurers can cite for not renewing home policies after a set time, typically 1 to 5 years. One of the few reasons allowed is a customer's failure to meet underwriting requirements, such as maintaining a roof.
Well, okay, yeah, shingles go missing. That's not necessarily a claim, right? You're going to have to repair that yourself. I mean, you could file a claim. It's not advised that you do. I don't think most policies don't account for missing shingles. But like the wind blows off a few shingles, you have to repair those. You have to replace those. And if you don't, if you've got a bunch of missing shingles and you don't do that, then, and also age. I had to pay out of pocket several years ago for a new roof that was over 20, by my account, it was 23 years old. It just had to be replaced. I didn't have any leaks, but I knew that it was not going to be long. And so I replaced it myself. I paid for it myself. There's no claim on it. And look, it's, in the business world, if you want to come off as fair, you should probably let your customers review those and challenge those points being made by the evidence, saying, hey, I got an expert and they did an inspection of the roof. They said the roof is fine. But there is no inherent right to have any particular insurance company insure your property. That just doesn't exist. There are plenty of companies that will do that, but if you've got an older roof, it's going to cost you. I changed homeowners insurance recently, and they go through the whole thing. Okay, tell us about your property. And the new company, the agent that I had on the phone, and he actually has a storefront office and the whole thing. And he was sitting there telling me, he goes, oh, wow, you got a great looking front yard. Oh, going through the whole thing. He was looking at my house, and he's not even in town. He's not even in this city. And he could see a number of images from, I don't know what. I assumed it was Google Maps, Google Images, or Zillow, or one of those things. And he was able to look over the property. Okay, I see you have a privacy fence. I see you have this and that. And you go through and you have to tell them what your house has. What are the components you can see, they can see on the records of it. I've never filed in the house that I live in. I've never filed a water claim. I don't have any water claims in the history of my owning that home. But they can go through a number of things. All right, do you live in a flood zone? They can get down to within a few feet where the hail has hit.
Mm-hmm.
And when I know this because I called my old insurance company back when I was replacing that roof. And I said, look, can you come out and take a look? You guys come out and take a look. I don't recall a storm except one time we had quarter-size hail, and it lasted less than a minute. That was the most. And then pea-size hail, which doesn't do damage for the most part, not roof damage. And he showed me, he says, here's what we look for. They go through, you've got an aluminum building out back, my storage shed. You've got a fence and all these things. And based on this, we don't see damage anywhere. We don't see damage on the roof. Okay. And he showed me, we can show you right here where hail has fallen within your own neighborhood. And they know exactly where it hits and when it hits, and they have a history of that. They have to work against, their losses. That's just kind of the way the game works. I know we all want a roof every time it hails. We have a coworker, in fact, here. Her house was hit last year, and that storm, what was it, last month?
Mm-hmm.
Just once again shredded her roof.
Wow.
Yep. And her son's car. And it was a complete loss on the car, and I think they were waiting. I know that she told me they told her, because we were traveling together at an event. She told me the roof guy said, "Yeah, you're going to need another roof." But there was some kind of thing if it happens within a year, no deductible. I'm not sure how that works, but she's had 2 claims in 1 year. I haven't had any hail claims with the house I live in now. Knock on simulated wood grain plastic. You had one.
Well, I did and didn't know it. I just my neighbor was getting his roof replaced,
Mm-hmm.
and I went over and I said, "Really?" I said, "When did this storm happen?" And he gave me the date, and I said, "Well, okay. Well, let me have the roof guy you're using check my roof."
Mm-hmm.
And he came over and he just said, "Yeah." He goes, "On this date is when you had the hail." And I looked up. I was out of town
Mm-hmm.
and didn't even know it.
Right.
He said, "Let me go up." He was up there. First off, they look at some of the metal vents, and they can see if it's been hit by hail.
Yeah.
But he was up there. As soon as he got up, he goes, "Oh, yeah, you're going to get your roof replaced."
Yep.
And he looked at it and he goes, "Yeah, this over here." He showed me what they look at. And then my fence, I didn't even notice this kind of thing. My fence, they stain that as part of the whole thing because you could see the hail marks. I didn't even know what I would have never even looked for it. I know that now I can look at a fence and go, okay, there are the hail marks.
Yeah, right.
But there's the hail marks right there in the in the fence. And so they painted the fence, the wood fence, or stained the fence for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. But and that was about 4 years ago. And we've had a few, but not anything major.
Right.
And there's people getting their roofs replaced, but I think they're the ones that didn't get it replaced 4 years ago.
It's look, last month there was so much damaging hail in just parts of North Texas.
I know.
And over the last few years, it seems like it has repeated, especially in the northern tier of the DFW Metroplex. But, insurance companies are going to use whatever technology they can. They're going to have to pare their losses. And if you're claiming something that isn't true, believe it or not, people claim things that aren't true. And that costs everybody money. If it's a catastrophic loss, especially if you say, yeah, well, no, this is the case, and then it's not the case, and then there's a loss, then that's going to cost everybody in that neighborhood, and I don't want that. I'm not a fan of, at all, of overpaying for something, but all the more reason. I just expect they're going to use whatever technology they can use that's available to them by law. That's going to be it going forward.
Soon we're not going to be able to hide anything.
I live in an underground bunker, so I don't know what you guys are going to do. But they're just going to see a bunch of dirt and grass. There really isn't. There's not much you can do because if they feel like they can't get an inspection that way, that's less intrusive, then they're going to show up at the door. Hey, we need to take a look. We're underwriting this. And if there's a loss, we're paying for it. You're paying the premium, which premiums are going up. But that's the game that insurance is. Hey, I'm kind of betting that I'm going to need to protect my asset as a customer, and they're hoping that they never have to pay out. It's just the way the insurance game works.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
April is National Invasive Pest and Plant Disease Awareness Month, an appropriate time for this educational campaign, according to Catherine Bronsky of USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, in that
April is a great time to get out and look for hungry pests. Trees are starting to leaf out, and it may be easier to see things in your backyard, your garden, as you're walking around in your community. As certain areas, these pests have not yet emerged. So if you're able to see them as their egg mass, you can easily find them, scrape them off, and smash them before they hatch. Remove them from things that may be in your backyard, like outdoor items, and actually be able to prevent them from hatching.
more details about Invasive Pest and Plant Disease Awareness Month, various threats, and ways to prevent them are available online at www.hungrypest.com. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, reading this from Reuters. Representative Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker and a key ally of Joe Biden, signed a letter on Friday from dozens of congressional Democrats to the President and the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, urging a halt to weapons transfers to Israel. This is, again, more of the growing pro-terrorist mindset of the Democratic Party. You know, I was reading this here. This is Rich Lowry's column in National Review. Israel is a democratic society abiding by Western norms. Hamas is a terror group that evicted its political rival from the territory by force. Israel seeks to discriminate between enemy fighters and civilians. Hamas deliberately targets innocents. Israel apologizes for its mistakes and attempts to rectify them. Hamas makes no mistakes that it will acknowledge, at least. Israel honors the laws of war and is trying to maneuver through extreme difficulties in combating a terrorist group that secrets itself among the civilian population. Hamas flagrantly and unapologetically violates the rules of war and is trying to do everything to maximize civilian casualties for propaganda purposes. And, of course, Israel didn't start the war. Hamas did, and not as an accident in a hair-trigger situation, but with malice aforethought. In short, even if you oppose Israel's war and how it's prosecuting it, and even if you despise Prime Minister Netanyahu, any hint that the two sides could be comparable is deluded or cynical, the product of an ideologically driven inability to make basic distinctions or of a desire to pander to anti-Israel animus. It represents a return to the worst sort of moral equivalence that characterized much of the left's thinking during the Cold War, and that was, I remember that very well. Well, you know, there's really no difference between the United States and the Soviet Union.
Right.
And of course there is. Of course there was, not is, was. And then, this sort of takes me back to the director, the editor of that human rights group, former director who quit, and just said all these human rights groups, they only look at governments. What they say is, only governments can take away rights of their citizens, or only government can take rights from away from others. Terrorist groups can't.
Right. Uh-huh.
That's actually their philosophy.
Right.
So we judge governments and terrorist groups differently.
866-90-RED-EYE. Now's your chance to be the caller. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So this came out on Sunday. There's a headline from Fox. Death to America, death to Israel. Chants pour out of Muslim protesters in Michigan on last day of Ramadan. Protesters in Dearborn, Michigan shouted, "Death to America, death to Israel." In the protest, you had Tariq Bazi, a Michigan-based activist associated with the Handel Institute, said in a video from the rally that was shared by the Middle East Media Research Institute. His comments were followed by crowds chanting "Death to America" in the background. Bazi reasoned that the rallies held on the day are so anti-American instead of the focus on Israel because it's the United States government that provides the funds for all the atrocities, pointing to Israel's continued siege of Gaza as an example. The activist went on to quote Malcolm X, who said the U.S. is one of the rottenest countries that have ever existed on this earth, while arguing to eliminate the entire American system. It's not just Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and devilry, and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth. Mm-hmm. Understand how radical these people are in Michigan.
Yep.
They are completely and totally anti-American. They are pro-terrorist as you can possibly get, with the Democratic Party major leaders now starting to catch up with them with their pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism mindset that exists out there. And you're seeing it. We mentioned it from Biden last week, Nancy Pelosi, other Democrats jumping on the bandwagon now against Israel. It's absolutely reprehensible what is happening. We expected it to happen, but why do members of the United States Congress that are Democrats support and try to make a moral equivalency of what happened on October 7th to anything else that has happened in this war? Why do they talk about having a ceasefire? Look, they can make an easy, every single ceasefire agreement that has come up, Hamas has said no. Yeah. There's only one thing for a ceasefire agreement. This whole thing, when Biden said a ceasefire agreement with no conditions whatsoever, are you telling me you're going to allow Hamas to keep 130 hostages, including Americans? There seems to be no concern from this government about American hostages at all. None.
Well,
zero.
They're not the America Last Party. They're the Death to America Party. That's where we are now.
I mean, it's just, I never thought I would see the day where major political leaders in the United States actually became pro-terrorist. Yeah. Pro-terrorist and against the United States and our best interest, and not only becoming pro-terrorist, but not giving a damn about our own hostages.
Right.
And just betraying and abandoning them. I mean, it is so incredibly evil what's going on in our government today.
There was no move. I didn't see any move to disavow and separate themselves from the people chanting death to America. Nope. Here in America, remember when Iran was doing that, and they had the liberal media had to go, well, they didn't mean death to America, death to America. Remember that?
Yeah. They really didn't mean death to America. They just meant they're unhappy.
Right.
Well,
and
so can I threaten to kill anybody?
I didn't mean it as a death threat.
As long as I say I don't mean it?
I didn't mean it as a death threat, that death threat. Well, this is where we are, though. We've been asking, okay, where do you go from here? Well, the radicals move on to death to America, death to Israel.
The entire United States has to go.
Right.
That's what we've been telling you. I mean, we're the Democratic Party. It's anti-United. It's about destroying the United States of America. We talk about the energy policy alone. Why would you ever do this? Why would you jeopardize? Why would you commit energy, economic, and national security suicide by pretending that we could run the entire grid on solar and wind?
Right.
It's across the board. Why would you sit there and say the border is secure when you know it's a complete nightmare? Why does the Democrats get upset with Governor Abbott sending migrants around the country when the president has been doing it already? And as I almost said Dershowitz, not DeSantis in Florida said, when they had the news that 300,000, Biden was shipping 300,000, the Democrats are all cheering.
Yeah.
All right, he's sending them to Florida. Well, then you don't care about the migrants like you claim you do. You're just wanting to play migrant musical chairs along with Abbott.
Right.
But Abbott's doing it to bring that issue nationally and say, hey, here's what's going on at our border.
Yep.
And by the way, he succeeded in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But who would ever sit there and say when gaslight to the point that Mayorkas did? By the way, I think they bring over the articles of impeachment on Wednesday. We'll see what happens there to the Senate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, who would sit there and say the border is secure? Like I said, mostly peaceful protest. Remember that one from CNN, I believe it was.
Right.
The city's burning behind you. It's a mostly peaceful protest. And the public knows what's going on. But to make a moral equivalency, by the way, as Blinken did the other day, the administration's constantly doing it, Israel and Hamas, as if they're two equal factions just fighting and they're both reasonable to have a ceasefire.
Right.
It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Speaking of absolutely nuts, well, there it is. What a weekend it was. Maybe the greatest all-time highlight for women's sports. 14.2 million or 14 million plus watched on Friday night.
Yep.
The Final Four games of the women's NCAA basketball championship.
Mm-hmm.
What the viewership was yesterday, I don't know yet. But the 14 plus 14 million, best basketball numbers ever for ESPN. You have the entire media celebrating women's teams. When women get the opportunity,
Yep.
And then with all this hype about the success of promoting women in sports and the country falling in love with women playing basketball. This question you knew was going to be asked eventually. Dawn Staley of South Carolina was asked about transgender players in colleges.
All right.
Are you ready for this?
Okay.
Here we go.
You just talked about, what a massive weekend this is, obviously, for women's basketball, women's sports in general. One of the major issues facing women's sports right now is the discussion topic about the inclusion of transgender athletes, biological males, in women's sports. I was wondering if you would tell me your position on that issue.
Damn, you got deep on me, didn't you?
By the way, did I hear laughter? She was taking extra long sips of the cup. I swear I could hear laughing coming from somebody in the press corps there. It was like,
Yeah.
Or they're like, oh boy,
Here we go.
Here we go. But let's continue it here.
I'm under the opinion of if you're a woman, you should play. If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play. That's my opinion. You want me to go deeper?
Do you think transgender women should be able to participate
That's your question
in
you
college
want
basketball?
me to ask. I mean, you want to ask, so I'll give you that. Yes. So now the barnstorm of people are going to flood my timeline and be a distraction to me on one of the biggest days of our game. and I'm okay with that.
Well, you better be okay with it because you asked for it.
Right. It's your words.
Right. They're your words.
Right.
Sage Steele wrote, love and respect Dawn Staley. Hate that she didn't have the courage to speak the truth, especially because I don't think there's any way she actually believes what she said. Her hesitation spoke volumes. Dawn knows damn well that she would never be a Hall of Famer if she had played against men. Whoa, man, I'm telling you. Period. So it's irresponsible and unfair for her and other retired female players in all sports, Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird, and retired female players in all sports to conveniently say that now they're okay with it. It's irresponsible and unfair to the girls and women who look up to them, and they know it. Isn't it crazy that we never see women trying to go play in the NBA or the U.S. men's national team or on the PGA Tour? This is all so sad. It was an amazing moment. I mean, because you're like, this might have been the pinnacle, close to the maybe even greater than the U.S. women's soccer team.
Yeah.
Back in, was it 99?
Right. Certainly right up there with it.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, this is great. We're celebrating women. We're celebrating women. Oh, by the way, and she produced one of the greatest female basketball teams of all time.
Right.
They didn't lose a game.
Not one.
And it's like all this cheering for women in sports and the opportunity from Title IX. And then she goes, but that's just screw it all. Men can play women's sports. I mean, my God.
Well, she says then my timeline's going to be filled on, the biggest day of our game. But you're making that happen. You're saying that it means nothing because it's okay for men to come in and play. Tell me what's more disrespectful. Someone who leaves a comment or one of the winningest coaches in the field saying it's okay for men to come in.
This one, South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley says she supports men playing against women if they identify as women. Willing to bet some of the girls on her own team disagree. She deserves every bit of criticism she's about to get for this lunacy, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's insane. Riley Gaines, Dawn Staley knows perfectly well that men's basketball is a totally different sport than women's basketball. That's obvious by the speed of the game, the size of the ball, the sheer amount of layups compared to dunks when a player gets a fast break. And it just kept going and going and going. Here it is, another one from Riley Gaines. Yes, Dawn Staley is remarkable, but now she's proven herself to be a sellout for women to appease men. She supports the idea of less than mediocre men taking women's opportunities. How is this different than the patriarchy they touted their grievances with? And it just goes on and on and on and on with the criticism. And I guess that's the question. Does she not really believe it? But she that sits in the back of my mind. But she knows at a university like that, she could get fired for cause.
Well,
for hate speech.
It could be that. And, then the question, all right, what's the next logical step? The next logical step is to have biological males playing in the sport.
Right. And the question, now open the question, what players would you be willing to replace with men athletes?
Right. Because if a biological male shows up, you're going to have to make room for that person on the team. Period. You got to be the hero.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, Eric, with the end of days Eclipse coming today. Hopefully we'll be here tonight.
I'm not counting on it.
Uh-huh.
Nah, I'm not
With
counting on it.
all the conspiracy theories and everything out there.
Yeah. Look, they're just trying to trick you to look up. I don't have an ending for this conspiracy theory. I'm just going to start there and leave it there since we're out of time.
The one I liked was when they're talking about, don't look at the eclipse, and it's like, well, you don't look at the regular sun too, so we suggest you don't look at the sun for a minute.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
How about no? How about just look at the ground?
Look, we're too stupid of a society to handle an eclipse. Everybody stay in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.